Welcome back. You are listening to the Mara Makonda show on Salam Media, and it is 10 minutes past 12 and time for our Empower segment with Mehreen Mia Cassimjee. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, Sister Mehreen.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. How are you, Sister Mariam?
Alhamdulillah, all well in yourself?
Alhamdulillah, shukr. I'm glad to hear that you're much better as well.
Yes, I am. It's not the sea, so
Alhamdulillah.
All right, Sister Mehreen. Last week we were speaking about perception and perceiving things and how we should perceive things and how we should perceive the virus, etc., etc. So today, what are we discussing?
So yes, we spoke about perception last week, and we also touched on the avenue of what perspectives are and the difference between the both. But today, inshallah, what I'd like to do is help our listeners with one aspect regarding perspectives and how is it that you can change your perspectives to be happier, because that's crucial. So once we now understand the perception and perspective, we must now learn how do we change our perspectives for the betterment and positive for ourselves. So remember that we all face drama in different forms all the time, every day. And it's not easy to actually change something just and change your point of view and just become positive all of a sudden. For example, someone might be upset with you. Things are just not going as you planned. Or you probably say to yourself, my children just aren't achieving. Or for some sisters out there, what do I cook every day is actually a stressful factor. You just have people that don't communicate properly with you, and you ask yourself, well, why don't they speak properly to me, stuff like that. Or if you get a flat tire on your way to work. And worse is if you have all of these things happen to you in one day. Can you imagine? So, I'm going to pause and just say one quote, Sister Mariam, and that's something that I like. It's that the problem is not a problem. It's your attitude about that problem that becomes the problem. So if that just resonates with our listeners a little bit, the problem is not the problem. Your attitude about the problem becomes the problem. So with that as a base, let's just start with a couple of the points that I would like to share and what I use in teaching people on how they can change perspectives. So like I normally do this in point form, I'll give them to you like a number point and you can write them down and then I'll elaborate each one a little bit. So the number one thing for me about how to change your perspective on things is distance yourself from negativity. And here is all about, you notice that it's so much easier sometimes to just focus on the negatives that you're going through, and rather than putting energy into try and find the positive. So we just dwell in this negative. And when you're in that one state of negative emotion, which becomes a higher emotion, often what happens is logic gets thrown out a window. And that then has a spiral effect of negative thoughts just compounding itself within you. And if people spend most of their time with you, and that are around you are also in this negative sense, you're probably going to find yourself drawn and pulled into the same pool of negativity as them as well. So remember, you need to always think about the types of content that you actually consume around you all the time. Think about it. If you are negative, and if people around you are constantly negative, are you consuming this negativity constantly? What are the messages that you are allowing yourself to program your mind with every day? So if there's so much of negativity and you're aware of that sense of negativity, then try and distance yourself from it, because when you distance from the negativity, you're able to then focus a little bit. Remember, the key thing here is to become aware that you're even in that negative zone, because that's when you're able to change that positive. So number one was distance yourself from negativity. The number two for me is about changing your input into this program. So when I talk about program, I'm talking about the programming you do for yourself. And changing the input means changing what you put into your program. Now, in order to change your perspective, remember, you need to be aware of you a little bit more, so you can identify what exactly are my emotional inputs and what exactly are my mental inputs. So you need to find sources after that of what are the positive influences for each of these. So, for example, you can go and you can get books and you can look at blogs and maybe some spiritual leaders that you fancy. Find their lectures of positiveness and draw positiveness from there. But don't rely solely on information that is only about negativity. Find podcasts, for example, that are about positiveness, empowerment, and yourself. And of course, don't forget that the world is out there, there's media out there, but you can be selective of what you would like your input to be. So you don't have to constantly feed yourself the negative input. You can decide what you'd like to take in and what you don't want to. And remember, at the end of the day, the best source of resourcing for you for positive is your own. And that for me is key, because you can rather, find affirmations that work for you. And be careful, of course. I think we did do a program on this before, of self-talk. How do you talk to yourself? What messages do you give yourself? So be aware of that to try and change the negatives that you feed yourself into positives. Remember when the pandemic first broke and we did a program on perception of the pandemic at one point. Now you can understand why we kept on trying to delve a message into people about what you're pulling yourself into in terms of information. You keep giving yourself the constant negative input, and that's becoming very stressful for people. So this is where that comes in. You need to do number two. Number two was to change your input into how you program yourself. As we move on, the number three for me is how you manage your expectations. So manage your expectations. Just the majority of us, we really get upset because we have this expectation level of things and people, and those expectations never met. And that is where we end up having the negatives and the upsetting and the disappointments and the depression and stuff comes in. So it becomes very depressing, for example, when we feel that somebody ought to be performing in a specific way and they don't, and stuff like that. But remember, and I said this before, it's all about you first. Find you first. And remember, you can't control other people. You can't control other people's actions. You can only control your reaction. And this is where that expectation level comes in. If you're going to do something purely for them and the expectation out of them, then you're going to curb yourself into the zone of, I'm going to have to feel negative because they might not do that. Don't do that. Do it with the sense of, I'm doing this for me. What their reaction is to what I'm doing is not what's going to faze me. But the point is, I'm doing what I have to do for me. And that's what's crucial. So you limit your expectation level of others because you can't control that. You can't control them. You can only control yourself. And, if someone you feel is hurting you constantly, then you know that that's the story. You know that that is the negative vibe. You're not going to have an expectation of any change because you're doing something different. So you just keep doing what's positive for you. Don't expect them to become positive because of what you are doing. You resonate in your positiveness and your glow and know you are doing what's best for you, and that's what works. Because that is what is crucial out of number three. Number three for me is remember, you got to manage that expectation level and don't raise it too high for everybody else that's around you that's not meeting that expectation. Don't do that. Expect of yourself, rather. Which leads us to the number four. The number four is acknowledge something that is not permanent. And here is important because lots of us, because we dwell in the negatives and we become so caught up in that pool of negativity that happens, we feel that that negative state is going to become a permanent state. But remember, it's not a permanent state. And a lot of lives are just, there's a lot that happens in our lives that, that we feel might be negative. But remember, thankfully, alhamdulillah, lots of the dramas that we encounter, if you look back in your lives, were just temporary. We felt at the time maybe that they were going to encompass our lives and make us, make life difficult for us going forward. But we got through it, alhamdulillah, and they were all temporary. So remember, if you were somebody stuck in a traffic jam in the morning, you still got to work and there's no traffic jam now. So it was a temporary mindset, it was a temporary mind frame, it was a temporary emotion. So become familiar with the fact that everything is permanent, but the change from how you're perceiving things and how your perspectives are, that is also not permanent. You need to be able to focus on what really matters and what doesn't. Let's just say you're at work and one of your team members is constantly the toxic one who doesn't allow the productivity to happen. You don't have to keep filtering with this toxicity. You can actually decide this person is not helping in this production line, maybe because they don't fit in here, they fit in somewhere else. So it doesn't have to be a permanent toxicity that you constantly, and you can change the circumstance depending on how you perceive things. So remember, people might constantly hurt you. People might constantly do things to you. You can't change their behaviors. You can't change their attitudes of other people, but you can change your perspective to know that their drama and what's happening with them is not going to last forever, and it only lasts as long as you allow it to last. Remember, everything that happens around you that other people do impacts on you only as much as you're limited to impact on you. So that's where that's it. My next one is kind of a profit margin, but you just look for a benefit in whatever is happening around you. Look for what is beneficial. There are major things that happen to all of us, and there's one of my favorite people is Napoleon Hill. For those of you who don't know him, he's an author of self-help books. And one of the things he says, Sister Mariam, is very, very nice. He says, every adversity and every failure and every heartache carries with it a seed, I think, an equal or greater benefit. So basically what he's trying to teach us is that no matter what you're feeling and no matter what the difficulty is at the moment, there has to be a benefit from there. How you're perceiving the negativity will be able to teach you a strength from that. So remember, there's only one way for me to teach this, and that's to ask our listeners one question. So you ask yourself right now at this moment, how will a change in my perspective about what I'm feeling or what I'm going through, how will the change in that perspective I have create an opportunity for me? I'll ask the question again. How will a change in your perspective create a new opportunity for you? If you can answer that with a benefit, then you're already cracking number 5. Number 6 for me is one of my favorites. It's an all-time example because I literally live by this. And it's help others and show gratitude. I put this in one. So it's help others and show gratitude. And here is, when I feel down, for example, about me or something that's happening around me, I just feel that I have the sense of upliftment when I try and help someone else for some reason. And it's always been like that for me. So it's almost like your psyche tells you that if something's going wrong with you and I stand in relation to someone else who's having something worse happen to them, I just somehow feel a positiveness on trying to make things better for them. And making that difference in their lives kind of like has this catalyst effect to make a positive difference in mine. So helping others will definitely help you, benefit you at some point. And with doing that, and why I put gratitude with this is because that's where you find that sense of gratitude. So even if you are feeling at your lowest, even if I have really something bad happening with me, or I'm feeling really down and I'm feeling like something's just not happening that I wished it could happen, I think of and I feel that there's still something about me right now that I can be grateful for. And when I'm grateful for the smallest things that I have, I realize that there are others that I'm helping who obviously don't have that small that I have. Gratitude in me makes me shift my focus. So that negative that I was feeling, by bringing the positive to someone else, creates a positive for me, only because I have this sense of gratitude. And this is linked to a separate part of the psychology sometimes, which is called energy psychology. At some point, I'll get to that, inshallah. But that energy you build up around you and within you is what helps you to progress. So when you're helping others, you're actually seeking gratitude for what you have. And when you do that, automatically Allah Himself, inshallah, will be pleased with you and will make whatever you are going through absolutely easy as well. So that sense of gratitude, remember, I think we always taught, Sister Mariam, that no matter what we're going through, the shukr and the sabr that we have to always have is where we will grow in our existence. And that's basically what we have to constantly live with. We have to know that I can do this and I'm able to do more because I'm able to be grateful for whatever Allah has given me. So inshallah, that's where those are my and I think I've listed them for you. So number 1 was distance yourself from negativity. The number 2 is to change your input into how you program yourself. Number 3 was to manage your expectations. The number 4 is to acknowledge that everything is not permanent. Number 5, me was look for a benefit in whatever you're going through. Number 6, the important one for me, helping others and show gratitude. That's my six, the top six for me, that will help you to be able to change your perspectives on things. And once you're able to change it, you will learn this. And this is the crux of empowerment in itself. I'm in charge. But what are you in
Mm,
charge of? You're in charge of what you can control. What can you control? I can control how I treat others. I can control how I treat myself. I can control how I think and how I feel, what I do, how I act and how I react. But
mhm.
remember what you can't control. You can't control other people. You can't control how other people act, how they react, and how they feel in their decisions. You can't do that. And when you're going to spend energy on trying to control what's beyond your control, then you're going to actually end up with all of the other issues that happen, which become totally negative and spiral with you. So, inshallah, we just make dua that we always able to see the positives and gain from Allah's wisdom and mercy, that we always grow within the negatives that we have, so we find the strength and we help others in it, inshallah.
I mean, Sister Mehreen, quickly, how do you silence your inner critic, your inner voice, that voice that is always pushing you towards perceiving yourself in a negative way?
Well, the first thing is you need to figure out why will it be doing that. Remember that if you're the one who's aware and if you're the one who's input into your programs, it's your program that's in there. So if you programmed yourself to constantly think of you in this negative way, then you need to reprogram that. And the source of that program will be the Control Alt Delete button, and then you
Mm,
reprogram it. But if you have this constant something in your mind that's saying this and saying that, there's a lot of factors around that system. Right? It's a beautiful thing. Maybe we should discuss it even more.
mm,
But there's a lot of factors around that because sometimes you become prone to have that negative voice in your mind simply because of your life and where you come from. People constantly putting you down, so you constantly feel that you have to feel that way about you and double and triple check yourself and double guess what you're doing and what you're saying. So there are other factors that relay in why you would have this perception of you. So the ideal is for you to identify why first. Why do you have this voice of negativity constantly? And then the second would be to, once you identify that and you're aware of when and where and what the triggers are, then you're able to say, how can I change that positive into, that negative into a positive for me? Um, the goal, though, is to always remember you can't, you can control you. And because this is within you as the voice telling you negatives about how you're perceiving things, you still have the control inside you to change that. You have it, and you
mhm.
have the ability to do it too. So it doesn't have to constantly be the negative voice. You can have that debate with yourself. Write down what is it quickly that is the negatives. What am I constantly being negative about me? And then try and filter it through into whether those were actually things that happened to me, whether there's something that was outside of me that made me start thinking these negative things about me. Because if they were outside of you, remember, you can't control that. You can start to change you and you start to become better for you. Again, if you go back to what I said earlier, for example, if you want to go and see someone because you love them and because you miss them and you haven't seen them for the whole of this year so far because of lockdown, if you're going to create this expectation level that I'm going to see them and they're going to be happy to see me, that's wrong. You need to
Mm,
change that. You need to realize I'm going to see them because I miss them. I'm going to see them because I love them. I'm going to see them because I have a void and I'm going to fill the void and I'm going to fill it with love because I'm going to see and embrace somebody that I haven't seen for a while, and that's it. So you draw that, so you don't create this expectation that will draw or might draw a negative for you. So inshallah,
mhm.
that's where that comes from. But that's a good thing. Maybe we could elaborate that. We can help other people even more later.
Yes, no, inshallah, we will have this discussion again to elaborate the inner self, the inner critic, the ego, how to silence that ego and
Yes,
inner self.
inshallah. We will
But
definitely
shukran
speak
so
more.
much for your time once again.
Jazakallah so much. Take care. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. That was Sister Mehreen Mia Cassimjee, a motivational speaker and life coach, talking to us about how to change our perspective for the better. You know, how to change our perspective so that we can be happier and have more positive thoughts and look at things in a more positive way. And as you mentioned, you know, distance yourself from negativity, change the input of things, you know, manage your expectations, like find what find something that you view your expectations should be low. So do not expect things to always be the way you want them to be, and do what you have to do for yourself first, and acknowledge that things are temporary, just like your life in this world is only temporary. Acknowledge that and look for what is beneficial to you, and then also last but not least and important as well, to help others and show gratitude. So if you have any suggestions for Sister Mehreen, please send them to us via WhatsApp. The number is 0617660355. Alternatively, you can send them to us on our social media pages. Find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Stay with us. We will be right back.
Penny a people are doing something special. They're giving you the chance to make sure that 100% of your zakat is going to help people who are in desperate need. So this year, give 100% of your zakat to poor and needy people with Penny Appeal.